Hi, everyone. I'm Ollie Thomas, managing partner here at Expedition Growth Capital. We are a bootstrap specialist, software specialist growth equity firm with offices in London, where we're headquartered, and Boston. And I am very grateful to be joined today by Guillaume Moubeche, founder and CEO of Lempire. Guillaume, thanks for taking the time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Oli. Excited to have this chat.
Awesome. So, as you know, Guillaume, the US growth opportunity is top of mind for a lot of the bootstrap founders we meet with. They're often getting pulled in by great product market fit and working out how best to resource the opportunity, whilst also managing a lot of growth in home markets. And so, really just want to unpack some of the experiences you've had there in the next 20 minutes or so. But before we get into that, perhaps you could just level set and share what is Lempire, what kind of scale and growth is the business at today?
Yeah, definitely. Lempire essentially is a suite of tools that helps basically sales teams found, their ideal customers and grow their businesses. Our biggest SaaS, I would say, is lemlist, so a sales automation platform. We launched in 2018, so that's been basically 7.5 years, and we're at $36 million in annual recurring revenue. Half of that is coming from the US, roughly, and I would say that for the first 5 years, the US were clearly our biggest market by far. And that's a market we've really heavily focused on. And I think as a European company, obviously based in Paris with no office outside of Paris and team members all over the world, but mainly in Europe, it's been challenging and a bit different to grow in the US. So I'm happy to share some of the learnings.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask at what stage in your development did you enter the US? But it sounds really from day one you were building a business there.
Yeah, absolutely. Initially, actually, everyone was giving me the advice, to start in France because I'm French, and they were like, okay, just focus on the market. But because Lemlist is a sales automation platform, I knew that you have 24 hours in a day. So at least I can manage better my time if I can take big leverage on the different time zone. So I decided to do sales prospecting on different basically continents, and I started to see a really good traction in the US for I guess the reason that I will share later, but essentially the marketing in the US is very different than what you have to do in Europe, and also the market behavior is very different. So in the US, very quickly we started having a lot of replies to sales prospecting emails on a specific target persona. So I decided to triple down my effort on that, and then it created some sort of network effect that helped us grow exponentially.
Awesome. Yeah, maybe just keep going on that. So I was going to ask, what were the surprises
Yeah.
about the US market, positive or negative, and also how you thought, if you thought about ICP, or you said particular persona, what that looked like in the early days, and
I think,
maybe
yeah.
how it's evolved as well, and if that changes the resourcing decisions as it's evolved.
Yeah, definitely. The first big difference and surprise, I think it's the overall speed and scale in the US is totally different than what you can see in Europe. I feel like it's a lot easier to close customers there. Typically, I can give you a specific example. What I would do demos in the US, I would just be screen sharing and telling people to put their credit card directly, so they can become a customer, and they would do it straight away. It was not even a problem. Whereas in France, people would say maybe I can use a free trial first and then ask for an extension, etc., etc.
Yes.
But speed goes also both ways. So as long as you keep delivering value, they will continue using your software. But if you don't, they will churn extremely quickly. Whereas typically, let's say if we take Germany, that is also a good market for us, or France, the sales process might be a little bit longer. But people also when you have a longer sales process, they tend to churn not as quickly if you if there are ups and downs in the process. I also feel we talk about the US as one market, but actually it's 50 states. So if you go to I don't know Midwest, or New York or San Francisco or Austin, it's very different. You have like different behavior. I think you can obviously like group some of the markets. So typically, if you take Miami, San Francisco, New York, maybe Austin, because the tech scene over there is like quite present also. I would say that people are very like tech savvy. They are used to leveraging software. And typically like talking about a narrow focus in the early days, I would try to focus, on software founders first, because people who know software, are actually like a lot easier to sell to because they've been there. They understand, that some of the software is not going to be perfect at first, but at least, like they are also like happy to give feedback, and at the same time happy to use software that can give them an edge. Because in the US, everyone is looking for an edge. And that's something that is a bit different, than the European market. People are a lot more like risk averse over there. Like they are happy to take risk because they know that the reward can be great. So if you come up with a clear value prop, so if I take lemlist, for example, the way I started, like the positioning there was we are basically doing like cold email. So it's sales prospecting email. We automate that process. What is the differentiator? Our platform is basically giving you the more advanced personalization features. And with more advanced personal features, you're basically going to have more replies, which means higher ROI. Yes. So for anyone who's looking for an edge, this is kind of like a irresistible offer. And that's why, like on this specific niche of people looking for an edge, we're actually okay to use software that are not like perfect because they know it's the early days, but they understand that they can get a really good ROI. Then for them, it was really easy to jump and start paying. And eventually, as we kept growing, the community aspect, I would say in the US is also like a lot stronger. And the good thing is down the line, that would kind of start having an impact in Europe, because Europe is always looking at the US for innovation. So I remember like maybe it was like 4 or 5 years into lemlist. Eventually we had people, like coming into the chats, typing, like in English, and we could tell that they were French. And they thought that lemlist was like a US based company just because they had seen it in all the growth forums or whatever, like in the US. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating because, today you've got a brand in your category, but of course at the beginning it was just about the solution and the product and does it give your customer edge. I think a lot of the companies that we're investing in are in that position where they're winning on product, but they're light on marketing and brand presence, and probably will be for a long time in the US. How do you think about that? And the importance of sort of best product wins versus a differentiated approach to marketing.
Yeah, it's I think, like in the end, it's always a matter of what do you call like the best product? Because typically if you look at phones and if you look at Apple, for example, if you ask like a Android user why Android is better than iPhones, the first thing that they're going to say is like, hey, our camera has 20 million more pixels than yours and we can do X and we can do Y. Whereas like iPhone users, they just know it's best. They know it's best because the brand that Apple has built make them feel very different when they use it. And even if you look at science, like studies have shown, that whenever people use Apple product, they actually feel more creative. And for me, this is the power. Of course, like you can build like the best products, and you should always aim to build the best product. But a really good product with a poor marketing is not a good product in the end, because it means that the value has not been communicated clearly, and people who are going to use it are not going to be excited about using it. And you need a little excitement for people to leverage the most capabilities of your product. And I think that's where most people fail, because it's actually very hard to do it. And the way, I guess this was also kind of the edge that we had is we were bootstrapped with no money. So the only way for me to actually find customers was to use lemlist, because that was the only acquisition channel, I could use for free. And by doing it, I was like, okay, now that I'm doing it, I should also like document that. And by documenting what I was doing with the product, people could actually picture themselves doing exactly the same and getting the same results. And I think like that's also something that's very different, you know, with Europe in general. Is like if I ask you to name, um, you know, like founders who are vocal on social media of European companies, you're kind of gonna struggle a little bit to find like some names. Whereas if I ask you in the US, you're gonna say like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Sam Altman. You could think of Naval. You can think about like a list that is pretty huge. And for me, it all comes down to one thing. It's like how fast do you want to build trust? Because essentially, like no matter like what business you're doing, whenever you're in B2B, you're giving like ROI on what people are investing when they buy your software. And for people to believe in that ROI, they need to trust you. And trust comes down essentially to basically like it's a triangle. You have like three parts. You have the emotional connection. So when they see you speaking, when they see your content or whatever, like do they like what you say? So sometimes, you know, it's people don't like your face. That's part of life, and
Yeah.
they're never gonna buy from you. But sometimes it clicks, and then it works fine. Then you have basically the whether or not you can keep your promises. So are you someone you know who's reliable? And this is basically if you say with my software you're gonna get better deliverability or like more replies to your sales prospecting emails. If they do it and they get more replies, then it means you're reliable. And the last part is obviously like are you someone you know who down the line would be also committed to support them for the long run? And that's something that only happens when you have closed the deal. And that's basically like the whole like support and customer excellence parts of the product.
Yes, and you I think for a long time have resourced that on a remote basis essentially. Can you just talk about that? How you think about talent, what's been the right approach for you in the different phases, and how, you know, how's that evolving?
Yeah. So the first thing is if you want to enter the US market as like a European founder and you're like early in the process, just be ready to work like long hours. I mean, it's important because I know a lot of people, for example, who have followed my advice to target the US, etc. And then they would be like, yeah, like, but customers they churn or like they don't really like it's hard like to maintain like a US based if you're not based in the US. And then I ask them like, what's your, you know, like when do you work? And then they're going to tell me like that they finish at like 7 p.m. So obviously if you finish at 7 p.m. in Europe, like don't expect to have customer like in the US for a long time. But typically I would work until like midnight, I mean, very late. So I could at least do demos, you know, like after dinner, I would always work for 2 or 3 hours, do support, answer question, etc. And I think this is like really important. So when I started delegating the support, I decided to hire people in Eastern Europe, more precisely in Serbia. Why Serbia? One, they have like perfect English. So if you take France as an example, but typically like Germany would be different because people in Germany like speak very good English. But in France, if you want people who can actually speak English, you need people with, I don't know, like a fancy degree from a business school or something, which means that technically you're going to have to pay them like a lot of money for a job that they wouldn't like to do. Whereas in Serbia, you have people who actually have like a perfect English and who are happy to work at different time shifts. So I hired actually a lot of people who were students and we needed like a job, and they would make potentially more money than what they would get with their degree. So they've been staying with us for now like 5 or 6 years, but they started, you know, like working while studying. So they would, you know, sometimes do the shift at night, and they would be happy to do it. And I think this is the kind of the best process is basically you take people who are like smart, hardworking, and who can speak like good English, and you basically create shifts so that they can match the US time zone. Because what you want is to have like strange sensors. But I feel like the support part will evolve over time, because typically right now, like we're using like Finn from Intercom. So it's an AI that is trained on all the answers that we've done all over the years, and the results are getting like better and better. Like it's quite insane. So I believe like the support part in the years to come will be less and less of a problem, because you can kind of like automate a lot of it. But
Yes.
for one of the key things also, I would say for us was to really focus on the human touch. So a big part of the brand to say that sales is about relationship, etc. So what I would ask people working in support is to always do like Loom videos or jump on demos with people, even though they paid like 40 or 50 bucks per month. You would provide them with a service that, like customers paying like thousands of dollars would normally get. And when you do it, the reality is like people start talking a lot more about your service. So instead of seeing it as a cost, customer support become kind of like really an investment for growth.
Yes.
And I think that's quite a good tip in the US because they value a lot service, which is not something we're always very used to in Europe.
Yeah, that's a
And
great.
I think, yeah, people like often underestimate the value it can have like long term.
Fascinating. And then on the sales side, your ICP is evolving, I guess, from one where it can be served remotely to one maybe where there's a bit more touch involved. Maybe share some of your thoughts around that. It feels like with all your success moving up market, there's like new decisions to be made there. How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, exactly. So what I shared was really like the self-service part and the first, I would say like 5 years. And then we moved towards, as you said, like bigger teams. So right now, like the focus is a sales team from 5 to 100, which means that it targets companies from, I don't know, like maybe 50 people to thousands of people. I think it's super important first to understand what is the buying process, because procurement is really like a process. So you need to have like first your answers ready when it comes to security, SLAs, SOC 2, etc., etc. So this is something that's very strategic. Whenever you want to make a move kind of like up market, you need to think through it on all the different departments, because SOC 2, for example, which is basically the part on the tech side and security, it takes a lot of time and it's a change at the company level. You have to start doing things that will slow you down a little bit, but that allows you to access a lot. Again, why does it access? It gives you access to bigger companies just because it helps you build more trust. So you have a third party telling that everything you do is more secure, which means that you're trustworthy and you've undergone a process that everyone knows is painful, which means that you are more serious about your business and what you do. So it's basically like a stamp that allows you to have access to bigger customers. So it's important. Then it comes to basically like how to sell to like bigger companies. And overall, we haven't really seen a huge impact on the accent or having like native salespeople, native English salespeople versus, people with a really good English. I feel like that might have an impact in US region where people are maybe like a little bit more attached to only talk with US based people. But overall, like as I mentioned, earlier, if you have like your focus in San Francisco, Austin, New York, anywhere like basically where people are more about, the ROI and they don't really care about the rest, I think like this is fine. However, you want to make sure like to start having people on the same time zone. So typically like our strategy right now is to start having a strong focus on a North America team. But to do so, we started like first in South America. So we have people, for example, like in Colombia or Mexico with like really good English who can basically like do demos directly in the US at the US time zone, all over the time zone. And it's never a problem for them. So that's like first thing, it makes it super easy. Second is adapt like customer support. So right now, like the way we do it with different shifts, I think this is something that can really scale and that works well. And then, we also want to refocus a little bit more on having someone with the perfect accent. And therefore we will start like really developing like Canada as a hub, because it's basically like a cheaper alternative to the US with the same quality of people that you can find to expand the market.
Awesome. Thanks, Guillaume. Keep it going on the talent topic here. I think one challenge bootstrap companies have coming out of Europe is getting the right talent. They're going with typically businesses that are less well known in the local market. They haven't raised a ton of venture capital, so they're often competing with players that are more prominent in the US talent pool. How do you think about that? You're looking at hiring somebody in Canada now, for example? How do you compete and win against other good software employers that they might be considering?
I think there are like you have several options to go for it. One option is to really have your office over there and create something special, like where essentially when you force people to go in the office, you create a culture there, etc., which is not something we've done. So I can't really talk about it, but I just make the parallel with what we did, in Paris, where we know that having an office can attract a specific kind of people who want to be in the office, who like to have people around them, etc., etc. So what I would say is like, it's the same thing as whenever you do sales, you need to have like your ICPs, except this time is ideal candidate profile.
Right.
So focus on people who have done remote already and who are happy doing remote. So potentially like, don't try to do like, like I wouldn't go for the big cities when I hire people. I would just try to find like a very quiet town, whether it's Canada or US, because that way you know that people are used to remote, like they've done it their whole life and they're not just gonna, like switch to going back to the office. Like that's not what they want. So that's, I would say, is the first thing. And then the second thing is really like you as the founder or your team needs to do like outbound to hire like the best persons. Like for me, it's a necessity and it's something that you should always be doing. I mean, I don't say that to the team a lot, but the reality is like I have chat with every key role in the company. Like I would say that we have like on the whole C-suite, we have like a lot of super talented persons. But while they are here, I'm still having chats with CMOs, CROs, etc., all the time, because if eventually one person decides to leave for a reason that is outside your control, then you need to be able to potentially replace. So as a founder, your role is to always, like be hiring. I think this is a mistake I've made for a long time. Like it took me a lot of time to understand how to hire and, like why it was so important to do it every single day, essentially. But this is your role. So the convincing part, even though you are like not, like as well known as US based companies, is how you pitch. So if you can't convince candidates to join you, how do you expect to convince customers to join you? So for me, it's just a matter of, it doesn't mean that you're going to be good at first, but you should try to do it. And talking about the brands, for me, what helped in the US, it's creating content. I know that it takes time. It's something like additional to your job as a founder. But the reality is like, if you message someone on LinkedIn, the first thing they're going to go to is your profile. And if they look at the content you write and then they see how you think and they believe that you are like someone like they could learn from, or someone, like that would give them essentially like good work conditions, then of course they're going to take the meeting. But if they don't see anything, no video, nothing, it's hard to sell. Yeah.
Yeah. Build a lot of trust.
Exactly.
Just as you were talking there, I was reflecting that you've made so much progress on your team in the home market. And, we're talking here about the US, but your ability to be successful in North America, it's also really influenced by how strong the foundations are you've built at home, right? And that's an interesting part of this discussion, making sure that you're building that foundation. Maybe you could just comment on that, because I think it's been super impressive what you've done in going from kind of a founder-centric business to really an executive team-led business. So I think it'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts on that.
I think the challenge essentially I faced was that for a long time, because when you start and you're bootstrap, you obviously have no money. So you get used to doing everything yourself. You get used to hiring people who have like a potential that you're going to train, that you're going to help level up, etc. But what I didn't realize is that the scale of the company we were at needed people with a different skill set. So for a long time, I believed that we had to figure things out. We had to, with just like grit and just basic skill set, but true motivation, people could actually reach new level. And I think that was a mistake. So eventually, at some point, I decided to hire like a chief of staff and a COO, so chief operating officer, to kind of like give me just a bit more time to work on strategic topics. And very quickly, when I started to take like a step back and see how the CEO would just like don't like to work, with the people I was working with because they didn't have like the level we were expecting for the company stage. Then I realized that it was time, to really like level up and build like a stronger team. So what I would say is like the first thing you want to build, if you want to build like an international company and expand in the US, make sure that all your profiles are like international. Do like interviews in English, make sure that they can, if you talk about marketing, you want to make sure that at least, they can do marketing in English. Like if you want to talk about sales, make sure that they work in international environment before. So that's where like some of the key points we're looking at. So typically like our VP sales came directly from HubSpot. So we knew, he had like already worked in that environment. Our CMO, she had worked for companies that had opened offices in the US. And what we did is we took people who had already done some of the stuff that we were like looking to reach. And I think that was like really key because eventually, I had the opportunity to take like a step back and really focus on, like the most important thing, which is who is our target audience and what do we need to accomplish? Because the reality is like as a founder, when you've been used to solve every single problem for 5 or 6 years yourself, whenever, you talk to customers, you want to solve their problem too. So eventually you want to solve everyone's problem. And that's not the key to, like fast growth. The key to fast growth for us, it's really like having a clear persona, knowing exactly who we do, like who we work for basically. And these are like the sales teams from 5 to 100 people and just focus on that. And everything else will come into place afterwards. And I think like, it's tricky, for many companies to define clearly like who their persona is. And for us, it took us maybe like 6 years to come to, or 6.5 years to do this. But once we managed to really have like a clear vision on it, everything became like a lot easier. And then, when you have like a very strong team, everything goes in the same direction. And then it's just like a compound effect and growth can take off again.
Well, it's super impressive. Seeing what you've done, it's a case study in that journey. I think, just super impressed. Awesome. Well, Guillaume, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks.
Great to talk with you as always. Yeah, look forward to seeing you in Paris soon.
Yeah, same. Thanks a lot, Oli.
Thanks, G. Bye.